So whatever data is entered by the user in the user interface in the section, that has to be validated, because if users enter wrong data, we should not allow them to enter wrong data. For example, consider a date of birth field. What if the format is not matching? Then we can use a edit validate rule in Pega so that that format is matched. That is dd slash mm slash yyyy or dd hyphen mm dash yy. That is the format. That validation we do at the client side by using edit validate rules. Say for example, if it is not related to pattern matching, but say if it is related to some business logic, that is the date should not be in the future date, because date of birth cannot be a future date because the person must be born in the past. In such a case, you need to add a business logic. So you need to create a validate rule and call that validate rule in the flow action, and that so that whenever user presses submit button in the UI, then this validation rule gets triggered. This is the configuration in the Dev Studio. Similar configuration we can also do from the App Studio. So for example, there are three things we need to decide when we are checking whether user enters the correct data or not. The data must be of the right type. Type means whether it is integer, text, char, boolean. This is the data type, object type. For example, users must enter a number in the total purchase units field, because the total number of units purchased, that field cannot contain text value. It should be a number only, integer. So that is, there we are checking the data type, that is the field type. The data must be restricted to possible values. This is a second data requirement. For example, your application might contain some loan type like home loan, personal loan, education loan. There are a fixed number of types which your bank offers. So user should be allowed to select from those list of options. User cannot select some other loan which the bank is not offering. In that case, you can use a drop down so that users can choose only from the types available, and they cannot enter some other type which the bank doesn't support currently. Next, the third requirement is the data must fit the business logic. For example, data of birth field must be in the past, because if the person cannot be born in the future, in this case you should need to use business logic validation. That is on submit button. You need to create a validate rule and call that in the flow action. This is the configuration in Dev Studio. Coming to App Studio, I will show in the later part of the video. So in the App Studio, now we are going to see how to configure the business logic validation. So you click on any step, you go to configure view from the right panel in App Studio. You can go to the validations tab. So here you can add your validations. So this is actually, this will be disabled, you cannot change. This is the action, that is on submit, you have to run this condition. If this condition is satisfied, this condition is basically for the invalid data, then this message will be shown. For example, in the UI, enter digit greater than 100 is the property label name. If so, we are telling the user that to enter a number greater than 100. But what if he is entering 100 or a digit less than 100? Then we have to show the error message. So when this field value, whatever value is entered, is less than or equal to 100, then show this message. If this condition is true, then show this message. So here we have entered 100 and this 100 is less than or equal to 100. As you can see here, because we want our intention is user should enter a digit greater than 100, but we have entered 100. So this invalid data condition is satisfied, and hence digit is not greater than 100, message is shown in the UI. Coming to another example, so expiration date is before today. For example, consider a online credit card entering system. So in that credit card, you need to enter name, CVV, expiry date. So expiry date should be either today or before. In such case, we need to show error. If expiry date is in the future, it means still the card is valid. So we need not throw an error in the UI. So as you can see here, if expiry date. So if you see where is expiry date property, expiry date property is present in the fields category. So in the fields, these whatever properties are here, these are the direct properties. These are these properties are directly available in the work class or its inherited classes. These are directly available in the PY work page. So if you see customer ID is another page, payment information is another page. These are embedded properties. These are nested properties. In payment information page, we are selecting expiry date. So it is like dot payment information dot expiry date. That should be before today. Then we have to throw error. So here you can select another field. If you want to select another field again, maybe another date in the PY work page or in another nested page, you can select time period if you want to select today, or if you want to select yesterday or tomorrow or in the last 7 days. There are multiple options you can just explore. For example, custom days. So in the this day expiration date should be in the last 5 days or next 5 days. You can configure like that. Exact date means you can specify that date, whatever date you want. Say for you have calendar week, means current week, next week, previous week. In day you have tomorrow, yesterday. So depending on your business requirement, you need to select. So here the requirement is, if expiration date is today or earlier, then you throw the error that expiration date is valid, not valid. You cannot use this card for it, because you cannot use this card for transactions. You can only use a card whose expiration date is tomorrow or a future date. So as you can see here, now I am entering some expiration date, January 1. Maybe say now it is 2000. I am going to enter 2022. Current date is July 2022. So when I press submit, a validation rule will be triggered and insert error will be shown. Expiration date is not valid because it is a past date. Say if I select future date, then it will be submitted without any error. So whenever you are selecting any step, going to the configure view, going to the validations, and you add validations here from App Studio, internally in the backend, Pega creates a validation rule and calls it from the flow action. Now we will see that configuration from the Dev Studio. For that, you can click on that process name and you can click this process configure process icon. So here, from here also you can open. So this is the connector, but you cannot double click and see the properties of that connector. You can click on open process in Dev Studio. Process in App Studio is nothing but a flow rule in Dev Studio. So this is the flow rule. So you click on that connector. In that connector, from flow rule, we call from connector in the flow rule, we call the flow action. So this is the flow rule. This is the connector. This is another connector. And in that connector, we are calling this flow action. We open that flow action. So this is the validate rule called in the flow action. You open that validate. So we did not create all this because these all are auto created by Pega itself. Whenever we are configuring from the App Studio, that is the beauty. You need to appreciate it. So internally is checking this when rule should evaluate to true, then show this message. So they are creating a message record also for you. Whatever error message you are entering, that will be present inside this message type field value. You can check the when rule created as well. If you want to see the advanced configuration, you can see CA dot payment information dot expiration date. If you are doing the same thing from Dev Studio, ideally you have to select dot. You have to declare that if it is any custom page or data page, you need to declare that in pages and classes tab, or else you can directly select dot. Then you have to select payment information and again dot that property. So configuration is easy from App Studio. So I suggest you to configure initially from the App Studio, and if you want any advanced conditions, then you come to the Dev Studio and do your configuration, because already automatically when rule will be created, flow validation rule will be created, that will be called from the flow action. So all these things are already happening automatically by Pega. So you need not create 10 rules manually. Thank you.